Let's see here. Get this over here. All righty. Let me know when you guys can hear me. Let me know in the Discord as well if you can hear me, just to get that double check from fans there. Let's see. And there's you guys can definitely hear me. All right, so let's get started then. This is of course the end of March loose ends. This is what I do roughly once a month where I just take live questions, which feel free to submit questions now whenever you want to. If it's a tip question, I'm of course more likely to notice it. And I appreciate, funding the channel that pays me, Gerard, Dan. Now someone doing a lot of the renders. The new person that we're working with for rendering things is working on a project with me very similar to when I leaked pictures of Alchemist first. So a method of conveying an upcoming architecture before we can literally get pictures. But of course, that turned out correct, and we were able to leak how Alchemist looks. Well, I don't know, like half a year before everyone else because of it, if not more than that, actually. That was kind of crazy how early we got that, but takes a lot of work, and funding this channel helps that. Until I see some of those tip questions, so I will of course also go through a lot of Patreon reader mails that were submitted by the fans that do support us already ahead of time. And of course, they get an ad-free audio version of this after it comes out to listen to. So, they don't have time to watch live, they can get it. Again, support us on the Patreon if you can. And let's just give it maybe another minute for people to join, make sure everything's working. And I guess before I jump right into it, I do want to mention, as I have been for the past few loose ends, that this episode of Loose Ends is sponsored by Micro Center. There's a link in the description. If you click on this link, it really helps the channel. And if you submit a build to Micro Center, they'll just give you a $25 credit to the store for free. No strings attached. $25 free if you submit a build to their website. So that's it. Micro Center is a big sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead. Clicking on the clicking on the link in the description helps a lot, and it gets you $25 to a fantastic store. So yeah, this is a new coupon, or should I say a new promotion they gave me for you guys. That's different from the other promotion that's going to keep happening every now and then where they're giving out free SSDs to Moore's Law is Dead fans. This is just $25. So if you've already gotten the free SSD from Micro Center, you get $25 as well. And again, clicking on this link, doing these promotions helps me a lot as well, helps me keep getting more ads from Micro Center, who really is just a fantastic sponsor, and couldn't be happier to have them sponsoring this content. All right, that is the opening ad. Then let us get into, let me make sure no one sent a tip question yet. Let me see. Nope, no tip questions yet. So let me start going through the main things to talk about this month. And one of the main things I want to start with is somewhat related to upcoming graphics cards because it's going to lead into them, but it's really just dropping GPU prices. So let me write down a timestamp for that. Right. So we're at about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. So Timo H writes in and he says, how's the usual availability, supply, and demand shipping all this expected to pan out over the next 2 months? And I mean, it's really simple. I think it's obvious. Everyone can see it. Availability continues to just improve every week. I mean, and in fact, I would say you can basically get every graphics card you want to right now. I mean, it might not be the price you want, but they're all there. In fact, let us even do a little check here. Just as of this recording, what do we got? Like the 6500 XT, because that's when I actually kind of expect to drop below $200 within a couple months. Yep, it's already drifting towards $220 for the 6500 XT. That will be MSRP, I think, within a couple months. And even the RTX 3090 Ti is, I believe, selling for not that much above. Oh, is it finally sold out? Okay, from what I'm seeing, it is finally sold out on Newegg, though. But yeah, the 3090 Ti is an interesting one because I don't think they actually have made a lot of them, and I know most vendors say that they don't have them, but Newegg seems to have a decent amount of them. And what I don't know is just how many people are actually buying them, right? Because my understanding is there's not that many, but that anyone who's been waiting to get a 3090 is now snapping these up. But yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to dropping prices, Timo H, thanks for the supporting Moore's Law Z. I would just say availability is going to keep getting better every month, and that means prices are going to come down. I don't expect every graphics card to hit MSRP, but I do expect a lot of the more the more highly criticized ones too. So I'd expect the 3070 Ti to probably be below $700 soon. I expect the 6500 XT to drift towards $200 very quickly because frankly that's a card people really shouldn't be spending much more than MSRP for unless they have absolutely no other choice. I'm actually testing one right now. And I think, the 6600 XT is going to drift towards 450 and lower. Now, cards like the 3080 12 GB, I don't know. That might always be $800 or more. 67, really the 6750 XT is going to replace the 6700 XT and the 6800. I expect that to be more like $550, but there's going to be some cards that do hit MSRP very soon. It's just going to keep getting better, and then Alchemist drops, and then the new graphics cards come out. Let's see. Let's see. I'll save that tipped question for the next section, unless it starts piling up. Mark Smith writes in and he says, based on the current state of the new GPU price reductions and increased availability, when do you think the bubble will burst on the used market for older GPUs? And this is a good question because it's distinct from availability and supply of the existing graphics cards from the current generations. They're all tied together though, right? When the 6500 XT dropped, we saw 1650s drop in price. We saw 1650 Supers drop in price on eBay. Before the 6500 XT came out, honestly, 1650s were often $300 or more on eBay, and now they're not. RX 560s, which I have one over there, RX 560s were typically 200. Now they're below 200. So it's just all tied together. The only thing I would say is when it comes to the used GPU market, I believe there is a floor that will break. I don't expect a crash in new cards as much. I expect a steady decline, but I expect the steady decline of the current generation of cards to cause a crash once they all start getting within 20% of MSRP, because that's when you're going to have a rush to the door. That's when you're going to have the people who have been holding out, with their, I don't know, right? Who have been holding out with their 2080s, seeing them, once 3060 Ti's start being around $400 on average, no one's selling a 2080 for 500, and that's when you're going to see a rush to the door and those drop to 300. So when do I think that burst on the used market will happen? I think honestly in about a month. In a month, I think the used market will start collapsing because that's when you're going to see that nervousness cause everyone to panic. I think who's been holding out on selling some of these old cards that really have no business selling for inflated prices. They're years old. There's newer cards out. It's stupid. And I do think there will be a used card crash probably by the time Alchemist comes out. Joaquin Hagan writes him. He says, hi, Tom. Looking forward to hearing this episode tomorrow. Intel is entering the GPU market where supply is up and prices are down. Do you think AMD and Nvidia will still produce their GPUs at full throttle or allocate wafers for other stuff? If they drown the market in GPUs close to cost and keep the market flooded till they launch the new series of cards, that should be a nice move to make a crap market for Intel to enter with Arc. Well, I don't think you always have to keep in mind that there's this decision made of like, do we want to sell 20% more cards or do we want to sell 20% less cards and make them cost 50% more? And I kind of think that's the decision AMD made with Zen 3 around Alder Lake's launch. There were no official Zen 3 price drops. Basically, there's de facto Zen 3 price drops, but they never did the aggressive price drops until right about now, actually. And that's because during the holiday season, AMD just calculated, hey, our sales will probably be 10% lower than otherwise, but we still think everything's going to sell in the market. And so we would just rather make 10% or 10%. We'd rather take a little less market share, but keep selling processors. The 5950X for $800 kept selling out through Christmas on their website, even if you could find it cheaper elsewhere. So that's a thing that I think is going to be a consideration of AMD, especially this summer. I think AMD is going to keep churning out as many Navi 23 and 24 cards as they can to try to get those below MSRP to flood the low end. Because I think AMD's realized they may have miscalculated by overproducing Navi 21 and underproducing the low end that a lot of AMD fans actually want. But but besides that, I do expect a bit less Navi 21, a lot of 6750 XTs, and some of that capacity they were going to use for that. Let me think. So what you've got to think about is eventually, though, will they prioritize like their other Zen products? So, for example, will they just start prioritizing 6 nanometer Rembrandt and the IO dies for Zen 4 over Navi 24 or something like that? I think so. I think that if they can get Zen 4 out sooner with reasonable DDR5 prices in the market, that's a thing where now again, remember, Zen 4 uses a 6 nanometer for its IO die. RDNA 2 uses a 7 nanometer, so they're not directly competing in that way. But there are some 6 nanometer products that they're probably going to shuffle around if they can get Zen 4 out early to compete with Raptor Lake. So that's the kind of consideration. For Nvidia, they're just using Samsung. If they can make a bunch of cards that profit, I think they will. Honestly, I think they will because they want to get as much market share as possible. I feel before RDNA 3 comes out because I do think Nvidia is very worried about RDNA 3. Um, all righty, so let me continue to save that tipped question because we will, well, let me just get to that now. So Eric Winberg writes it and he says, just tipping you first of all for some respect. Thank you, Eric, for the tip. And he says, do you have any thoughts on Ryzen? I think those would be great. So I'm going to get to more of my Zen 4 thoughts later in the live stream. But in terms of what I think about Ryzen, not much really. I mean, it's about time they refreshed some of these products like and got out of two. What is it? What is it going to be? $300 5700X. It's about time that they had that there, effectively the same performance as a 5800X to compete with the i5 12600K, which I have one right here at a benchmarking station. So I don't have much thought on Ryzen specifically for the current, products. I think you're going to see the 5800X3D be a solid upgrade for the mid-range gamer who still is an AM4 setup. I think if you continue to see X570 motherboards get cheaper, you're going to see a lot of budget builds with 5700Xs over Alder Lake. And I mean, especially with 5600 non-Xs that I believe will drift below $200 pretty quickly. But overall, that's also going to hinge on if Alder Lake's platforms stay as more expensive than AMD, because sometimes they're not much more expensive, to be honest. Um, Let me see here. Sky DeBrule writes in, do you have any thoughts on RTX 4000 series laptops? And so let me just put this, we'll start this section now. Then where are we at? 12 minutes. We'll just do Lovelace and RDNA 3 talk here. So yeah, the first question, thank you for the tip, Sky. Do you have any idea when RTX 4000 series laptops will release? I mean, yeah, I think desktop Lovelace is going to come out around Q3. And I'm sure they will show off Lovelace designs then. It's hard to say if I really expect Lovelace mobile. Usually the mobile comes out after the desktop, but it would be really good for Nvidia to launch mobile Lovelace next to Raptor Lake and Phoenix from AMD if they can. But Meteor Lake's coming around the corner as well. So I don't know. I would say, and this is the lazy answer, but it is the truth. By Q1, you will see Lovelace mobile graphics cards. And I expect them to be significantly better than Ampere mobile graphics cards. Really, Ampere mobile graphics cards brought what? 20% more, 30% more performance to the laptop market at the same TDPs. It's not that impressive, really. I think Lovelace is going to bring at least 50% more performance at same power consumption and laptop designs. I think you'll see, RTX 4080 laptop editions that go into those desktop replacements that are probably stronger than a 3090, so that's going to be fun. And you'll see like 4070 laptops that go into the, standard mid-range laptops that you usually want that are thin and have 6-hour battery lives or more. And yeah, I mean, I think those will probably be about as strong as a 3080 or something. And that's going to be really cool. And that'll, of course, coincide with Raptor Lake, Phoenix, Meteor Lake stuff. So I think if you're looking to like, and I know a lot of people are considering this because of increasing desktop prices. If you're like looking, I'm tired of building desktops. I just want to get a sick gaming laptop I can bring with me anywhere. I'd say quarter one to late quarter one next year. You're gonna have laptops out twice as good as what we have now that truly game in 4K and are worth getting as somewhat thin and light desktop replacements. Let's see. Mark writes in and he says, if you have high-end PCIe 4.0 parts, is it really worth upgrading to PCIe 5.0, especially since games are not next gen yet and the new console hardware are not really being fully utilized yet? If you're going look, PCIe 5.0 right now in Z690 motherboards, it's a cherry on top. It's nice. It's good to know that if you get an Alder Lake i5, you can upgrade to a Raptor Lake i9. And guess what? You can use PCIe 5.0 like Lovelace, and I know RDNA 3, I believe, at least does. Of course, Alchemist does PCIe 4.0. But that's nice. It's probably not necessary. Having said that, RDNA 3 and Lovelace are going to be really powerful. So I'm sure there will be like a 5% bump as usual when you have big upgrades to using the latest PCIe standard. But no, you shouldn't upgrade to PCIe 5.0 because you got to feel like you have to. It's just nice. It's kind of like PCIe 3.0 and Ivy Bridge like a decade ago. I had an Ivy Bridge system. Did I need PCIe 3.0? No, but it allowed that platform to be used forever. Heck, I actually ended up giving that was it an i7 or i5? Where did I get that thing? Yeah, I think I ended up giving that i5 or i7 Ivy Bridge I had to my cousin or something who had a like future ready Sandy Bridge system, but the motherboard was built with PCIe 3.0 support. So he went from an Ivy Bridge, Sandy Bridge. I'm sorry, he went from a Sandy Bridge i3 to an Ivy Bridge i7, and all of a sudden he had PCIe 3.0 support. So that's nice. He's still using it. That's nice to have 5.0, but no, you shouldn't be specifically upgrading to 5.0 really for anything, even professional apps. There's really almost no products that use it yet. Like there aren't even when I talk to people, I mean, NVMEs are stuck at 4.0 for the foreseeable future, and even PCIe times 16 SSDs. From what I'm hearing, like, yeah, there's some boutique ones, but most, I don't think we're gonna get M.2 PCIe 5.0. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get Gen 5 NVMe drives until the end of next year anyway, so it's really not something you need anytime soon. And that's, again, when they're, like, added for $500. It's not like any games will use it well. Okay, so that's the rest of the tipped questions. Let me continue with my Lovelace and RDNA 3 questions here from the patrons. Um, Ryan Denisky writes in, many people are excited that the next gen GPUs will push down the current gen prices. But do you think AMD and Nvidia will only launch Halo, like 6900 XT slash 3090 Ti class beating GPUs at above their respective MSRPs until the crypto hangover in the impending glut of GPUs clears the market? Meaning next gen mid range won't be out until next summer. Navi 22 came out 5 months after Navi 21. Could Navi 32 or 33 be longer? Well, some of this is getting into my RDNA 3 leaks, which I'm actually going to do a 3-part on RDNA 3, I think. I wouldn't expect 32 for a while, but I think 33 may come sooner than people think. I'm not 100% sure on that, but no, I think Navi 33 may come a little sooner than people expect. And when it comes to, and I've always heard there could be mid-range Lovelace that launches first, and I still hear that. So I wouldn't assume it's like last gen completely. However, I think there's probably going to mostly be a focus on the mid-range and the top end and not in the upper high end, meaning the 6700 XT replacement might not be out for a while. I hope that answers your question. Guntis Pegless writes in and he says, what are your thoughts on the ATX 3.0 and ATX 12 volt 2.0 now that the 600 watt high end desktop GPUs are soon to become a reality? I mean, honestly, I don't like 600 watt GPUs, but I do like having one 12 pin that I can use, or I guess now 16 pin that just works on everything. Like, that's really nice that you just have one pin, you have one connector, put it in, you're done. And you don't have to worry about all of these like 8 pins going in that take up more room. It makes the design cleaner, it looks nicer, it's easier to work with, and it's a better power delivery standard. So I like it. I think it's fine. I know everyone's worried about more power usage, and they should be to a certain extent, but I wouldn't look at these. The 16 pin is separate from my concerns of high power usage. I like the idea of having one connector that works for everything, even if you push it like crazy. But that doesn't mean I want them to push it like crazy, if that makes sense. All right, let me cut off those. So let me see. I see some new tipped questions here. All right, I'm gonna save Jared. I'm gonna save yours. Jay Brinks 18 writes in. He says, given that AMD and Nvidia are going for higher TDP GPUs, what is the ITX environment going to look like? When will GPU TDPs come back down? Well, let me put that kind of as a timestamp there. Um, Look, I think it's obvious that what's going on is we're just going to continue to have these ITX mini PC builds that have half of the volume for just the graphics card, honestly. And I think that's what the market's told people they wanted. You could already go back to these like tiny PC builds that were bragging about fitting two 1080s or a Titan Z. Wasn't there the Falcon boutique builder that could fit a Titan Z in this console sized case? Like, I don't know, 8 years ago or something. And you're always and that all the way about almost a decade ago, we were already moving in this direction. So, does it mean the ITX size thing, like, you know, like graphics cards this big, is this form factor going to be very popular? For the low end, yeah, I think you're going to see plenty of these types of cards. I just do not think you're going to see high end ones try to fit into a Fury Nano shape because the market's decided, frankly, they don't want it and they don't need it. We'll just make the case fit a graphics card the size as a microwave and just cram everything else into a tiny card sized area so that you can have a smaller case. Absolutely, that's what I think is going to happen. I'm going to save Voss's question here and move on to the Intel Alchemist questions. All right, so let me add another timestamp for that. Alchemist. All right. Brett Summers writes in from the Patreon. He says, hey, Tom, just wondering, where do you see Alchemist pricing, specifically the A5 and A7 lineup? It seems like it's coming out so much later than we all hoped for, and it's going to most likely be rolled out by, I don't know, right before Lovelace and RDNA 3, both of which are backed by 30 plus year industry veterans in graphics. How is this going to affect pricing? Do you see this as a ripple effect that will hurt the image of Battle Mage? Thanks. I think Battle Mage is just gonna have to stand on its own 2 feet. I think that people will remember Alchemist and prejudge Battle Mage before it comes out, but I don't think that means Battle Mage can't be successful if Alchemist is lukewarm. I think what Intel has to successfully do is make sure Alchemist doesn't suck ass. That's basically all it is, guys. And it looks fine. It looks like you'll need optimizing. All they're going to need to do then is just ensure they price it where it needs to be and eat the cost. Look, it's only 4 million cards is nothing to sneeze at because I do believe the like 4.1 or so million cards they're going to launch are probably going to most of that volume is going to be between end of April and August. And so really though, that's going to feel like 1 quarter worth of time. We're getting 50% more cards than usual. So I think that's going to help the market, but they just have to accept that they've done this to themselves. They have a very narrow window where this will be competitive, and they've basically got to price this with how RDNA 3 and Lovelace will be priced, meaning go watch my Lovelace leak. Like, I expect, if I'm remembering correctly, the 4070 to beat the 3090 Ti by like 10-20%. The 4070 therefore to be that's the 4070. The 4060 to be kind of around a 3080. The 4050 Ti to be kind of around a 3060 Ti or 3070. And so if you think about it, how much will those cost? Well, I expect the 4060 to probably be a 12 gigabyte card for $400 that ends up performing above a 3070 Ti, meaning Intel's going to have to launch their 16 gigabyte card for no more than 400 if they want to compete or not look completely stupid. And I think they might. And I think, look, a $400 3070 that has its own cool features launching in 2 months, hopefully from now. Although to be honest, seeing that limited edition makes me worry it's in 4 months. Um, seeing that type of a thing, I think I'll do fine then. It'll be 400. It'll have a narrow amount of time, but I do think they need to do that so that it's not remembered badly. And frankly, $400 for a 16 gigabyte GPU from Intel. I know they've been stockpiling components for. I mean, they're made, guys. They're just finishing the drivers. I think that they can afford to sell them for $400 and probably make a 10% profit anyways or more. So I think they're going to be willing to do that. And I've heard that the low end one, the 6 gigabyte card that's probably about as strong as a 6500 XT or a little weaker. I don't know. But of course, because it is 6 gigabytes and enough PCIe lanes, it's probably going to end up outperforming the 6500 XT in a lot of benchmarks. I think they're going to price that under 200. I think they really will do 200 max. And even if, the 6500 XT is probably making a pretty soon, now that RAM prices are coming down, 6500 XT is probably going to make like a 30% profit at $200. You'll probably see that drift to 180. I think Intel can break even probably around 170. And I think they're planning to do that with the low end card. And frankly, I think the market could use that because that'd kind of be like a 6 gigabyte RX 590 that uses 75 watts. Sounds pretty good to me if they can put that at 150 to 180. The market could really use that. And with its, professional editing capabilities and encoding, I think that'd be a pretty sick budget workstation card. So that's my thoughts on how they need to price everything. Gwen Farron writes in, howdy, Tom. With Intel purportedly delaying their GPU release for the sake of better drivers, have you heard any word of Xe Linux drivers? A Steam Deck Lite with a 4 or 8 core with 2 to 4 PE CPU. Wait, so you're saying with like 4 P cores and 4 E cores and Xe GPU sounds great for current battery woes. Oh, okay. So you're just saying like if they took like the mobile dies of Alder Lake and there were some handheld devices that work with Linux. I haven't asked anyone about Linux drivers with Xe, to be honest. So unfortunately, I can't answer that too much. But what I will say is, from what we've seen, Alder Lake integrated 96 EU graphics seem to be around an MX 350, actually a little better than an MX 350, not quite an MX 450. And I think you could see, that probably puts it pretty close to Steam Deck performance in the right package. So yeah, there could be some real Steam Deck competitors with mobile Alder Lake, or maybe some that use Rembrandt even. That'd be cool. In half a year. So I don't know. That's really all I can say. I haven't looked into the Linux drivers specifically, but I guess you're also saying, yeah, I'm sorry, that because the Steam Deck is a platform and you're allowed to make your own Steam Deck devices, you're basically asking, is someone going to use mobile Alder Lake or Raptor Lake to have a Steam Deck competitor that runs the Proton Steam OS thing? I don't know. I can't say for sure, but I think that there's definitely room for that to happen. I don't know why it wouldn't work well. Sorry, it took me a little stumbling to get to what your actual question was. All right. Let me add another timestamp here for Sapphire Rapids and Threadripper. All righty. So I want to get to a tipped question here. Jared Voss writes in, do you think there's a market for quasi HEDT where it has the cores threads counts of a normal consumer CPU, but as the IO and PCIe lanes that Threadripper has? Somewhat, yes. So again, and actually, let me just lead into this question here. 3DS Boy 08 writes in from the Patreon and asks, now that Zen 3 Threadripper Pro has launched to OEMs only, should we assume that Zen 4 Threadripper is officially dead or be delayed to OEM at first under the Pro moniker, especially considering the new platform that would be required for such an offering? Thanks. No, I don't think we should assume that. Again, I think people just need to remember this about the Threadripper platform. To this day, it doesn't have competition. There's nothing. What does Intel have? What? Like they've got their 28 core, and above that now I know they've got their Xeon Ice Lake, like Xeon W's, I think, are a thing you can buy now, but they're like $4,000 or something. Like they're not cheap, and those are still, Zen 2 Threadripper is still pretty much competitive overall with Ice Lake Xeons. So at the end of the day, I would just go to the Moore's Law Z YouTube channel and look at my Fishhawk Falls leak that goes through this whole situation, I think, pretty well. And the fact is, until Intel launches Fishhawk Falls, until they launch their what is it? MSWS mainstream workstation platform that is the spiritual successor to the HEDT line, until they launch their Sapphire Rapid successor or HEDT workstation pseudo thing, AMD really doesn't need to launch anything, and that's going to be Zen 4. So I still don't think we should read too much into if a Zen 4 Threadripper, even a standard one's coming out. I think it could. But having said that, I don't think there's a need for both a workstation platform and a Threadripper platform anymore. There should be one Threadripper, because if you think about it, I mean, I don't even remember anymore. Doesn't Zen 2 Threadripper have like 64 PCIe lanes and an absurd amount of IO, and it goes up to 64 cores, guys? How is that HEDT? HEDT existed when Intel was only making quad cores for consumers, but then they were up to like 18 cores on server. And so they said, well, 4 to 18, that's a huge gap. Let's at least launch 6, 8, 10 cores as a pseudo HEDT consumer platform. But now we have HEDTs with the same core counts as enterprise. And at that point, I don't even know that it is HEDT anymore. And you have consumer platforms that have 16 cores or soon 24 cores with Raptor Lake, maybe up to 32 cores with a workstation edition of Zen 4. So all of this is kind of making the middle HEDT obsolete, in my opinion. I really think moving forward, it should be workstation and consumer. But like 3DS Boy asks, or was it Voss asks? Yeah, Jared Voss asks, I think there's room for a 90 platform for consumers. So right now I have an X570, and that's still what AMD's using. And there will presumably be an X670 or 770, wherever they end up. Who knows if they'll skip a generation for Zen 4. And I think that will be the normal. Hey, you've got like 4 M.2 devices. You can have maybe 2 PCIe slots or so. It comes with, 8, 10 USB ports of the latest IO. And a lot of people complain about the amount of USBs on some motherboards. It is worth pointing out that modern USBs are like 4, 8 times faster than USB 2. And that's why there's less USB ports to a certain degree. But yeah, I think there's room for there to be a new tier for AM4. Well, now for AM5, which is called X690. So this would be, hey, it's still AM4. It's still just dual channel, but it can support more memory. Maybe it supports up to 256 gigabytes. Instead of supporting only 4 M.2 drives or 6, it supports up to 10. Maybe instead of just like 6 or 8 SATA, you get up to 12 SATA. Maybe they make standard double PCIe lanes, like with a switch or with just an upgraded chipset. And they're just like, yep, 32 lanes. So not 64 lanes of PCIe 5.0, not quad channel memory, but more memory, but 32 lanes of PCIe and 50% more SSDs. And then it's like, instead of having to buy a $500 Threadripper motherboard, you buy a $300 X690. That's kind of what I think AMD should do. I don't know that they will, but I think there's been some rumors floating around that they might even just use. I think there's some rumors floating around that they might use dual chipsets for that one. Like just use 2 chipsets, 2 of the like B, whatever it is. What would it be then? Like B650? Yeah, B650 or whatever the 670 would be to make that. And I think that's a really good idea. All right, so I've gotten through those questions there. Let me make sure I haven't missed any tip questions now. I think I got through those ones. Got that one, got that one. Answered that one. Answered that one. Okay, I believe. Oh, I think I see a new one. Okay. What is this? Nab Husad writes in. Thank you for the tip. Steam Deck is a godsend for me. I can finally game at night as a dad with 2 kids. The Steam Deck is not niche personally. Well, it's not niche personally because you're playing it. That's not how niches work. You might be in a niche, but he goes, and it has a lot of potential. Love from Pakistan. Hey, thanks for the support. I know that we have fans in every country. It's cool to see someone from Pakistan writing in. Yeah, I mean, I would say I would say here's what I'll say about the Steam Deck about if it's niche or not, because you kind of touched on that. Let me add a timestamp for this. Is Steam Deck niche? Like, I have a few people I've seen in the Moore's Law's Dead Discord say that their Steam Deck pre-orders have been delayed to quarter 4 of this year. So I don't know how niche it would be if it had maximum potential and how many they could manufacture. But I think it's very clear, and I think I've been saying this the whole time, guys. Like Sony's a $200 billion company or something. Valve is a 5 billion or 2 to 10 billion, somewhere in there. So they're like 10, 20, 30 times smaller than Sony. They cannot afford to buy up the allocation Microsoft, Sony, or even Nintendo can. So I think when you see people having their pre-orders continue to get delayed, it's because they probably only plan to make 5 million of these. And I bet they're buying more capacity. And I think there's definitely going to be a Steam Deck 2 with the level of success it's getting. But I don't know if it's niche. It's not like the previous handheld Windows gaming devices or Linux gaming devices that, a Kickstarter made like 10,000. That's not a lot of them, right? But it is still not mainstream yet, I would say. And I don't think it can be, because if they want it to be, they've really got to buy up TSMC allocation. That's going to be a tall order for a smaller company. But yeah, I mean, I hope, again, I think me, like everyone, is rooting for Steam Deck, because even if you want one or not, Steam Deck succeeding is good for gaming. It's good for competition against Microsoft's Windows monopoly. We should all be rooting for Steam Deck. It's just not quite where I want it to be. I still think I'm just basically a laptop guy when it comes to mobile gaming. I don't want a game on the bus. I'd rather just listen to a podcast. I'm usually driving or something, and if I'm on an airplane or something, I'd rather open up a laptop. But that's me. And I understand a lot of people like the instant on, play in the corner, get some Elden Ring going on if you have kids. But I don't have kids yet, so maybe it would be different if I had kids. All right, let me scroll down here. We got Blackbird writes in with a huge tip. Thank you for the support. He says, I appreciate your content. Can't wait for RDNA 2 APUs for desktop. Tiny ITX builds are so much fun to build. They are. I think they're really fun. And I think I mean, it's funny. I saw someone in the YouTube comments like making fun of some video I did from like, I don't know, early 2019 projecting APU performance. And I looked at my chart and I said, I think we could have APUs as strong as a 4060 in 2022, which is just funny that I predicted the 4060 would come out in 2022. That's correct. And ultimately, I don't think AMD is going to have an APU as strong as a 4060. But, even if the M1 Ultra isn't as strong as a 3090, it seems to perform above a 3070, sometimes a 3080. So I think we do have APUs as strong as a 4060, just AMD's not selling them to PC gamers. And it's really weird, actually. I guess that's one thing I don't know if I would have thought about it back then. I didn't watch the video. I think I may have mentioned Apple, but we have APUs at the level I thought we'd have by now. They're just not for PC gamers, unfortunately. And I really recommend listening to the last Broken Silicon, where me and Dan, there's a conversation we have about when AMD will make godlike APUs. And a conclusion I come to is it's going to have to be for someone else. The problem is now Apple makes their own chips. Those were the ideal candidates to be buying up boutique high-end APUs, but now they make them themselves. And Surface was another candidate, but Microsoft, based on what I'm told, keeps shafting AMD for contracts with Microsoft Surface for some stupid reason. So without them, I don't think AMD is just going to design a God APU for desktop. I think they're going to keep using whatever they're making for laptop. And so someone's got to order a God APU for laptop, and then they also use it for desktop. But until that happens, I don't know that we're going to get the apex of APU performance we were hoping we would get by now. Remember, by the way, again, just a quick reminder to everyone, hit the like button. We have 1,000 people watching right now. I'd hope we can get to 1,000 likes. Double check that you've subscribed to the Moore's Law's Dead YouTube channel. The past 2 days, the YouTube has just randomly unsubscribed about a few dozen people. So double check that you're subscribed. And remember, it's supported by Micro Center. Micro Center is giving you $25 free if you just submit a bill to them. That's it. And if you've already gotten the previous Micro Center deal where you got an SSD for free, you can get this too. So just a quick plug there. All right. Air Force X writes in. He says, where do you think the consoles stand right now? Ooh, I like this question. Let me put this. Let me see. What was that? 34, 39, 45 console performance in 2022 is what I'll say. Right. Air Force writes in with a tip. Thank you. He says, where do you think the consoles stand now? I remember prior to launch, Xbox Series X was said to be a 2070, 2080-ish. And the PS5 was 2070, 2060. Oh, that's no way. Uh, no. Both of those are wrong. Honestly, in game after game after game, whether it's Halo Infinite or what else was there? There's another one recently. I forgot. There's another recent game that came out. We're seeing that the Xbox Series X is at least a 2070 Super. So this 2070 bullshit's really got to stop. And the PS5, what did they just test? There was another one they just tested. I don't remember. The PS5 pretty consistently is around a bit above a 2080. If you use the consoles well, they should be around a bit better than a 2080. Again, if there was an RX 6700 non XT, that's how they would perform. Or if there was a 150 watt version of the 6700M that was overclocked, that's the PS5. And it's proven over and over. Now, in RTX PC games like Watch Dogs Legions, where they just lazily port NVIDIA code to console, that's when you get the consoles performing closer to a 2070, 2060. And it's unfortunate that shit keeps happening. But you also have games that get ported to PC where, like Elden Ring, where the PS5 pretty much performs like a 37, almost a 3070. So, that's where the consoles are. If you make good use of the consoles, they should be above a 2080. If it's a okay port, they should be around a 2080, 2070 Super. And if you're lazy, well, if you force NVIDIA ray tracing, of course, they're going to be around a 2060. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, listen to the Brian Heemskirk Broken Silicon guy. Knows a lot about hardware. He's a developer. We really dig into the console performance in the last one. And the upcoming guest is NX Gamer. Go to NX Gamer's YouTube. He's like a one-man digital foundry. We talk about the consoles. We actually talk about the situation of upcoming exclusives for PlayStation as well. You may be surprised. He's very open about what he knows, and I was too. So definitely make sure you're subscribed to Broken Silicon, because that drops in a couple days. I'm really excited about that. But to directly answer Air Force's question, where do we stand? About where I thought we would, right? I mean, 2080 plus minus 30%, depending on how optimized the game is. You're seeing PlayStation 5 exclusives get to the insane performance I thought they would. You're seeing some lazy ports. So far, it doesn't seem like they're using the asset streaming yet, but that was interesting. NX Gamer is still very sure by the end of this year, we're going to see some mind-blowing asset streaming on the PS5, but we'll just have to see if that's true. Remember, consoles haven't even been out 2 years. Every game coming out now, Halo Infinite's on the original Xbox One. Horizon Forbidden West was designed first for PS4. Now, they've done a good job with the graphics on PS5, but fundamentally, it's not like an engine built from the ground up for PS5. And we're really not going to see games like that until the end of this year. That's just the truth. It takes time for games to have been built from the ground up for the next gen consoles. Okay. Was there any other tips? I think there was a few. Blackbird tips again. Oh, no, wait. Oh, wait, did I already? Oh, I just went in the wrong order. Sorry. Let me see here. Born Mega says, sorry, posted my question on regular. I don't know what that. Oh, I found it. Born Mega writes in, thank you for the tip. Do you believe that it was right of AMD to skip the 6000 processor lineup on desktop and relegate them to mobile, where on paper they are compatible with both DDR4 and DDR5 like Intel? Well, we still don't know if they're going to bring Rembrandt to desktop. And if they do, I think you're going to see let me put a timestamp here. I guess that's kind of a specific question. Rembrandt Desktop. I think Rembrandt's probably going to come to desktop, and I think what Rembrandt will do is they're going to wait. Like right now, they're still on the 5000 series on desktop, but I think they're going to roll out Raphael, your 16 cores or more Zen 4 lineup. And then below that, that's where you're going to get your 8-core Zen 3 Plus. And I think this is finally going to be well matched for the low-end APUs we've been waiting for. Because frankly, AMD's charging high-end prices for Cezanne on desktop, and it's because Cezanne's CPU is as good as a 5800X. So what are they supposed to do? Price it at 200? You can't price it like the low-end APUs. And but at the same time, it lacked some PCIe. It was stupid. I think Rembrandt will be good. You'll have PCIe 4.0, you'll have DDR5 support, but it's only Zen 3 Plus, so it'll make sense. You can have your, what is it going to be called then? 7,000, would it be 7600X, 6 or 8 core. And then below that, your $200 8 core with integrated 12 compute unit Rembrandt Zen 3 Plus. They'll say, yeah, it's 8 cores like the other one, but this is a Zen 3 Plus architecture, so it's lower IPC. I think that's going to happen, but it's not going to happen until Zen 4 is out. It's going to be on AM5, and it's not going to be until it makes sense with that lineup. They're not skipping desktop. It's just laptop first. All right, so I think that's a good answer there. Let's see. John K writes in, hey, Tom, do you think AMD will try to add more PCIe lanes to either the chipset and CPU to allow for more USB and M.2, especially for higher end boards? Yeah, I mean, I think Executable Fix has leaked some of those pictures that I've also received. So I know they're legit. Hasn't Executable Fix leaked a version of Zen 4's chipset organization? I can 100% verify his leak's correct. Now, it may be an outdated version with lower standards, but I believe what we saw there was a bit more PCIe, an extra M.2, and a bit more USB than we have now. I don't expect them to double USB over what they have now. No. I think they want you to buy a workstation platform if you need 20 USB ports. Um, Round Duck Kira writes in, I can prove what the SSD has done. Apex and PS2 run. I don't know what that means, unfortunately. So, but I do thank you for the tip, Round Duck. Greg F writes in, do you see AMD dropping an FPGA block on a CPU or GPU for specific gaming tasks or many other things? I think you're going to see acceleration blocks dropped. I think I did a video where I analyzed that at the beginning of this, or I think it was early last year already, guys, where I talked about how, yeah, I think Zen 5 for sure will have like a neural engine, just like Meteor Lake will. Now, I'm not sure if Zen 4 will yet. I don't think it has one yet, but I think this is definitely something we're going to be seeing very soon. Cameron Harper writes in, do you think ARM will ever come to Windows in the same degree that it has happened with Apple and their own silicon? Hmm. For the time being, I'm not seeing it. Um, to the same degree as like the other people? No, not really. Do I think we'll see more ARM products that run Windows and eventually maybe you could have an ARM gaming laptop? Maybe, but I still think that's a few years away. It really is, at least, and I don't think it's ever gonna be I don't think for the foreseeable future, it will be to the same degree as AMD or Intel or Nvidia. Nob, Usad writes in, "What's your opinion for Nintendo removing the Fossex video of Steam Deck emulating Switch games? Nintendo is the Nvidia of the console world." Kind of are. I don't have an opinion. Nintendo's usually pretty heavy-handed with people who use their content in videos, so nothing. I have really nothing to add about that. They just do that, I'm not gonna sit here and say they're evil. It's not something I would do if I was in charge there, but something plenty of companies do. Cameron Harper writes in with quite a large tip from Australia, I believe. He says, "Do you think our?" Oh no, I already read that one. Thanks again for the question, Cameron. Sorry, guys. All righty. I think I'm caught up on tipped questions. So let me get to another set of the Patreon questions. Let's see here. Alexander McCrossan writes in. He says, at what point do you believe DDR5 memory will be clearly worth the platform upgrade / cost to purchase? Considering Intel 13 series will use the same MOBOs and tech, it should be mature enough and superior by its launch, right? Thanks for all of you and Dan's hard work. Don't forget about Gerard and our render guy, too, who hasn't decided yet if he wants to be acknowledged for the renders he's doing, by the way. Let me see. Let me just go to Newegg and see what DDR5 costs right now. So 16 gigabyte. Let's see. What do we got here? I want 32 gigs total. So, and then let me also filter for speeds. I don't want to see any speeds that are like dirt slow. So let's just go 5200 or faster. Um, so we got 16 gigabytes for 145. Yeah, I mean, it depends what you're comparing it to. If you're comparing it to like budget DDR4, it seems to be 50% to 100% more. But if you're comparing it, I actually just got 32 gigabytes of RAM and then put the 16 gigabytes my benchmarking station. So actually, my desktop has 32 gigabytes now, and I've overclocked it to 37, 33 megahertz. Forgot what the CL timing was. It wasn't bad or great. It was like above average CL timing. And I also have it one to one with the 1866 fabric clock on my Zen 2 CPU, which I saw a big boost in stability and some performance going to 32 gigabytes locked one to one fabric clock at 37, 33 megahertz. So, that RAM, I believe I got it for like 130 or something. So if you consider that, and then you look at what 32 gigabytes costs for DDR5, it's like 50% more on a good day, but still sometimes twice as much. So yeah, I don't know. The question basically was, at what point will DDR5 memory be worth the premium? Well, games don't really see to use it over lightning fast DDR4 yet. So, and that's half the price, so kind of. So, I mean, I think it's going to be worth it if you want to use Zen 4, like that's when it'll be worth it. It's going to be worth it if you want to use Meteor Lake. Although I wonder if Meteor Lake might still support DDR4 actually. I don't remember if I leaked that or not, but and Raptor Lake, yeah, I think Raptor Lake's probably going to work fine with DDR4 as long as you have really fast DDR4. So when will it be worth it? Well, for the most part, I think you want DDR4 right now if you just want the higher capacity and performance of the lightning fast speeds, but that costs more. So I don't know. I think by the end of this year, it will be better. But for the most part, it's not going to be great, but it'll be better than now. And you'll want DDR5 because you want Zen 4 or something. That's probably going to be true until next year. All right, let me see here. Falto writes in, do you have any info about? All right, I should probably put a timestamp for that now. Wasn't it around there? DDR5 worth it. Do you have a time frame for Raptor Lake and Zen 4's launch? So let me put a timestamp for this too. It's something I definitely wanted to answer after seeing some people ask about this recently. Yeah, guys, I link in the description, or there will be when this is done being run. I believe it was my recent, what was it? Zen 4 versus Meteor Lake video. I confirmed when Raptor Lake comes out. It should come out late August or September. I said late quarter 3, I believe, for desktop, and then quarter 4 for mobile. So, yeah, guys, I've already told you when Raptor Lake comes out. When does Zen 4 come out? To be honest, I haven't followed Zen 4 closely. I'll probably start following Zen 4 closely in a month. But otherwise, I've done some early leaks. There's new info leaking about it, and I'm much more interested in finishing up some RDNA 3 and MI300 stuff. So that's what I'm worried about now. But otherwise, I think AMD is going to clearly want Zen 4 out around then. And I've heard some people say Zen 4 can be ready sooner than you'd think. They're just kind of trying to time it with DDR5 being cheaper. So it's all a balance of do we want it to be out next to, Raptor Lake? And in fact, the fact that they're only launching one Zen 3D so far tells me they want Zen 4 out in quarter 3 as well. Otherwise, I think they would have done a bigger Zen 3D lineup. All right. We got a question here from Born Mega. He says, am I the only one that seems to believe that the Steam Deck processor might be a salvaged PS5 or Xbox Series APU? Yes, you're the only one. Because I know it's Van Gogh, because I leaked Van Gogh, and I know people who have worked on Van Gogh. That's what's in the Steam Deck. I know people have worked on it. It is its own APU. Now, the only thing I will say is Valve embellishes how custom the APU is. There's a couple of things maybe added for them at last minute, but for the most part, Van Gogh was done in 2020, and then it just wasn't used until the Steam Deck bought it up. Like it was kind of meant for the Surface and Chromebooks, but none of them ended up using it because there's just other priorities at AMD. Nob Husad writes in, thanks again for the tip. Remember, if you support us on Patreon, you can submit reader mails for free. But he says, what has been the best GPU or CPU you have owned? Well, I mean, technically the ones I own right now are the best, right? But I mean, it's going to be, it's anyone who followed me for a long time will know what I'm going to say for the GPU. 7970. I mean, when I got the 7970, you've got to remember that, what was it, 1680 by 1050. was the standard for resolution. 1080p was actually kind of the 1440p of the time. In 2012, 1600p, so 2560 by 1600, that was the 4K of the time. 1080p was kind of the 1440p of the time. And the 7970 ran 1080, it ran 1600p at 60 at the right settings, and it ran 1080p well above 60 at a hilariously high frame rate before high refresh rates were that standard. And I had a monitor that was able to be overclocked, an Asus 3D monitor that had 3D glasses, if you can believe it. Just dates how old that was during the 3D craze. The reason I got it though is because it had the best color accuracy and color reproduction IPS at the time. I didn't get it for the 3D, although I did use the 3D for a few things, which was funny. Anyways, though, and yeah, I was able to overclock that monitor to 76 hertz. If I had some artifacting, I could overclock the monitor to like 118 or 96 hertz. And my 7970, it just ran every game locked 76 hertz ultra. And that was at stock. I was able to overclock the strongest card on the market by 35%. And it still used around only 300 watts. It was incredible. Honestly, like I overclocked that thing so hard. I had knobs I would turn in the PC if it was getting too hot to like manually adjust volume while I was gaming. I was such an overclocker back then. And I mean, again, think of that now. Think if you could get a 3090 Ti and then overclock it by 30%. That's the performance I had for the time. It was crazy. You just don't. I think RDNA 3 is going to be about as exciting, though. I think, and they may call it the 7970 again, so that'll be funny. In terms of CPU, best CPU I've owned, you know, honestly, man, I'm gonna say 3950X. I liked my Ivy Bridge i5. I liked my Haswell i7, but I'm sorry. 3950X has just been a dream for me. It's a Threadripper without needing a Threadripper. It runs all my games above 120 hertz, and I can just do anything on it in a compact form factor that didn't. It cost 750. I got it the week it came out, but it didn't cost 1,000. It didn't cost 2,000 like the 10 core or the Broadwell E cost 1,700. So I've got to say, when it comes to the favorite CPU I've earned, it is the one I have now. Actually, it is. It is the 3950X, the first 16 cores standard desktop processor. Absolutely blew me away. So, all right. So I'll put that down as a fun timestamp too. GPU, CPU. All right. Oh, don't want to miss your question. Lelbot1 writes in, "Hello, Tom. I have a Vega 56, and I want to know if it's worth the change to a toxic 6900 XT or wait for next gen." Well, I don't know. What can you still sell that damn thing for? Is it even what price is this commanding? Let me look, because that's what it matters. Jesus, that's still silly. I wouldn't assume just because some things are listed at a certain price on eBay, you can easily sell it at that price. But it seems to me you can probably still easily sell a Vega 56 for $450 on eBay. Dude, sell the Vega 56. Holy shit. Like, because that's the performance of, it's about kind of 2060 performance, which is more than a 3050. But think about that. You can go from like a 250-watt card you sold for 450 or $500 and probably get a 6600 XT that's just stronger for the same price right now. Buy the 6600 XT first. Buy it first before you sell the Vega 56. Have it in hand so you don't regret selling your card first. But sell that card, man. Or get a 6900 XT if you want to, I guess. I would actually lean towards 6600 XT because new cards are around the corner, but no, you'll be happy to switch them out like that. And I actually have a 3050 here. I'm going to start testing soon. I might have another 3050 on the way from a sponsor. If that another 3050 gets here, it should be maybe around my laptop 2060 in performance, maybe a little weaker. I might just slum it with that and sell my 3070 and then wait for Lovelace or something. This is a decision we all need to make because I do think prices, and I've said it, I think the used market's going to collapse in about a month. So these are hard decisions we all need to make pretty soon, I think. Let me write that down as a timestamp as well. Should sell Vega 56. All right, let me see here. Round Kira says, "Born Mega MLAD doesn't need to confirm it himself." Oh, someone mad that someone thought maybe the Steam Deck used something else. Yeah, whatever though. Alleviator Beats gives me a tick. Thank you for the tip. No question, it seems. All right, let me make sure I haven't missed any other tipped questions. All right, let me move on to some more Patreon questions then. John Beans writes in and he says, "Hi Tom, any news if Zen 4 APUs will have RDNA 2 or RDNA 3? Are we even expecting RDNA 3 to have a significant IPC uplift?" Oh yeah, so let me write this down as a timestamp here. RDNA 3 APUs and IPC. Are we even expecting RDNA 3 to have a significant IPC uplift if the desktop GPUs will get the majority of the performance uplift from multi-die approach? Yes. The way RDNA 3 is different. It's work groups now, completely differently organized work groups, and there will still be monolithic RDNA 3 designs. You'll see those in APUs eventually. You're going to probably see that in Navi 33. That's the first leak I want to do soon, but I'm sorry, everything keeps delaying that. I really apologize for not getting that out yet. And if there's a PS5 Pro, there's a chance that could have an RDNA 3 upgrade or something like that. Same with the series refresh upgrade. Me and NX Gamer talk about that in the upcoming Broken Silicon. So there's still monolithic RDNA 3 that will have an IPC upgrade. But it's just like you have to keep in mind what IPC means. Does Ampere have an IPC increase? Not if it's in pure CUDA cores or teraflops, but per SM, yeah, per SM, Ampere packs double the FP32 per SM, and so you could say there's a IPC increase per SM, and so that's just how I would think about it with RDNA 3. Pretty huge IPC increase per SM at the very least, and you'll want it. You'll want that over RDNA 2 in an APU. Will we see Zen 4 APUs with RDNA 3? I think so. I don't know if Phoenix does. My understanding, and I have not checked recently, but my memory is that Phoenix is a RDNA 2 plus kind of and not RDNA 3, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think we'll see some RDNA 3 APU, of course, by mid next year at the very least, though. I just don't know if the first ones will. All right. Anakazi writes in, just curious if there have been any leaks or news insights on PSVR 2 now that it has been shown at GDC. So again, let me put a timestamp for that. So that's definitely its own subject. Do I have any insights on PSVR 2? I expect to get some within a month, actually, now that you ask. And if you're interested in PSVR 2, look for the next Broken Silicon. I keep plugging it shamelessly, but it is what it is. Like the upcoming one is with NX Gamer, who has a lot of connections in both PC gaming and console gaming. And we talk about PSVR 2 for a while, and there's some pretty big repercussions in some of the stuff he seems to know about how PSVR 2 communicates with the PS5, how it works, that there could be a wireless version of it eventually, but that they want to launch with a more cost-effective version now is what it sounds like to me. So that's one tidbit I'll give you. Otherwise, he says this on Broken Silicon, so I'll say it here first. This is an insider info. PSVR 2 uses foveated rendering. That's public. He says the stuff he's seen for it really increases performance a lot. So what I would say then is, without going into too much detail, I think the PS5 is definitely strong enough for PSVR 2's more than 1440p for eye. It's over 1440p per eye, and the stuff they're doing with foveated rendering seems to dictate that this will be capable of running the thing at semi-native, good enough to native above 1440p per eye at 120 hertz. And I think this is exciting. The price is what's going to matter in the games. So I think they're going to target $400, and I think it's going to look and work really well. Hopefully, eventually there's a wireless version. And if they want to sell this thing, they need to get more third parties to use it. And I think that's the plan from what this sounds like too. So like maybe less exclusives. So there will be some PSVR exclusives, but like it sounds like they may be targeting like I'm not specifically saying these games, but as an example, perhaps a VR mode for Cyberpunk, perhaps a VR mode for Resident Evil 8. And hopefully, I would say the holy grail is if they can get Half-Life Alyx on there. So I think that's going to be their method, is making it easy to make VR versions of already existing games. And I think they're going to look fantastic. So that's what I'll tell you now. Otherwise, subscribe to Moore's Law is Dead. Subscribe to Broken Silicon and listen to the next episode. The next one's going to be a banger. All right, let me see here. What do we got here for tips questions? Let's see. Nab Hussad writes in, he says, PlayStation not eating PS3 games. Not eating PS3 games has been a bug hit and will bit Sony in the ass. How do you reckon would happen 2 or 3 years going forward? Oh, okay. So your question is, it seems like there's some translation concern here, but your question is, what the hell is going on with PlayStation backwards compatibility? I'm 100% sure they're working on it and they have some version of the emulator in their labs already. Look me in the eyes, 100% sure. They have it. They have a PS3 emulator. My understanding is it just doesn't work very well and they want it to be perfect. And it's not, they don't see it is worth the resources required to get it out sooner rather than later. But for sure, they're going to have PS3 backwards compatibility in some form, I think, by the end of this generation. I'm sure. I'm sure, guys. Clip it, share it, write an article about it. The question is when, because it isn't as easy as you think. I know there's PS3 emulators on PC, and half of the games run like shit. I know you'll find one game with the PS3 emulator on PC that runs the game well. But what you've got to understand is how many PS3 games were programmed radically differently than the other ones because of how weird the architecture is. The problem isn't that the PS3 was hard to program. It was. The problem is that the ways different developers got around it, based on what I'm told, was different. So if you're going to make a working emulator, all the tricks you need to emulate, you need different tricks for different games. And it's a nightmare, apparently. It's not that they couldn't get it working in a year if they wanted to. It's that they don't see the money in it yet. And so they don't want to pull other teams like Nix's off of it to get it working sooner rather than later. But 100% they have a PS3 emulator. It is coming. By the end of this generation, they want it fixed. It's just not a priority. So I don't know. It honestly pisses me off it's not ready yet. But again, guys, they have to get it working. They're not going to keep streaming PS3 games from cell processors forever for PlayStation Plus Premium. They're not going to abandon their PS3 catalog. They're not going to. But it's hard to get working. Different games require different tricks to emulate. And they know that if they just launch every game at 720p 30, people are going to be pissed. They want it to look good like Xbox has done. And it's requiring a lot of effort. And by the way, they've been working on this way longer than you guys would think. Let me write that down as a timestamp because I bet people are going to want to hear about that. Going Nab Assad writes in, gonna subscribe to the Patreon soon, inshallah. And then isn't the response inshallah alaikum? Yeah, or salam alaikum. Anyways, or did I just F it all up? Whatever. I apologize if I did. Thank you for the support, though, for sure. And remember, if you subscribe on Patreon, you could have asked NX Gamer questions. A lot of patrons asked some questions about backwards compatibility and stuff. That's why we got to it. So, got a lot of other great guests coming up soon, too. So, okay, then. That is the tipped question so far. Let me move on to another Patreon reader mail. Balto writes in, just wondering, are you into any JRPGs? I'm a big Final Fantasy, Xenoblade, and Nier guy, and I recently got into the Yakuza games. What's the newest Final Fantasy coming out? Is it Final Fantasy 16? That one looks interesting to me. I like the premise from what I've read. Almost like a Demon Souls-y vibe in terms of like a more Western-looking approach to the lore. With, of course, the standard Final Fantasy flair and types of enemies and stuff. That might be good. I really liked Final Fantasy X a lot, actually. I just replayed it again, just so you guys know. I just beat it again. And I started another game again. That's kind of my comfort food game. You know, like some people watch The Office. The video game equivalent of just throwing on The Office for me is, which my office is Scrubs. I just throw on Scrubs if I want to veg out on a show that I've seen a couple times and love. That's my favorite sitcom. But Final Fantasy X, you know, so I love that. But since then, you know, Final Fantasy, what is it, 15 didn't really get me so far. Final Fantasy 7, I've played it a little bit and it was good, but it still hasn't gripped me the same way. It is good though. I feel like the dialogue from PS1 hasn't aged very well. It just comes off as weird sometimes. And I actually liked Final Fantasy 13 for the time. I did go back and try to play Final Fantasy 13 2 or 3 or something on Game Pass. The second I just had to start spamming the A button, I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done. I liked Final Fantasy 13 for the time, but the ending was stupid, and I'm not going back to the button spam combat system again. I don't think that aged very well. Um, Thank you for the question, Falto. Trogdor writes in, "Hi Tom. In case you want to talk about Bitcoin for a bit, are you going to be following anything at the Bitcoin conference happening next week?" No, I don't follow it as closely as I used to because I don't feel like I need to. I think Bitcoin has proven hack proof. It's proven resilient to world governments. It's going to keep getting adopted, and I have nothing to say. I think they're going to keep implementing like new versions. They've got SegWit done. They're going to keep doing versions of Schnorr is going to come and Coin Join, and it's just going to continue to be cheap. It's cheaper for me to send money with Bitcoin, even on the blockchain, than it is with Ethereum because Ethereum isn't built to scale. And that's all I have to say about it. Let's see here. uh Let's see. Freeman writes in and he says, Tom, how old is Reese? Can this even be legal working with her? I think she deserves a raise for all of the ad revenue you farmed off of her. Give the doggo some snacks. Ooh woo. I will be giving the doggo some snacks soon. Let me see if I can get her up here. Reese, come here. But she's part of the ads, and it's allowing me to afford a good life for her. So I think that's her payment. Um, Come here, Reese. Up. There she is. Mwah. Yeah, you're a star. You're a star. Everyone knows you. And she's better now. Her paw's completely healed from an injury she got. Yeah, isn't it? It is. All right, you can go. All right. But yeah, so there's your doggo moment. Okay. So that is all the Patreon questions, I believe. So let me close that now and full screen what's going on here. And then I will also start looking at the Moore's Law is Dead Discord. Where you guys, if you're patrons, can just submit some questions here. I'll get to them if I can. I can't promise I will. Let me see here. Ooh, I'm getting some interesting thing from a couple of sources. Oh wow. Oh wow. I may have a lot more leaks coming soon. I'm reading some stuff from a couple of sources. There's multiple sources that just messaged me about upcoming products. Oh wow. Yeah, I don't know, guys. Lovelace may be coming sooner than you think. Anyways, you have to wait for those leaks, though. Let me see here. We have another tip. Remember, sponsored by Micro Center. Go in the description, click on it, get $25 off. All you have to do is submit a build. Remember, there's another coupon I've submitted that gets you a free SSD at Micro Center. This really helps the channel if you click on it. Micro Center is one of my favorite sponsors. A fantastic company if you can get near one, even within a few hours. Yep. So just a reminder on that sponsor. Reminder, make sure you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel because they've unsubscribed some people, and hit the like button. We have 1,000 people watching. Let's get to 1,000 likes. Let me get back to the questions. Sorry, just a shameless plug again, guys. Forgive me. Got to pay the bills. Joker927 writes in. He says, with SLI being dead, there's no longer crazy GPU builds. Yeah, I know that was always fun. I do miss the triple 6950X or 69 just HD 6950s and triple 580 builds, GTX 580 builds. And he says, any idea why there's not multi GPU on a single board or other super cards? No insane levels of performance because latency is just too much of an issue now. And with us getting down to more, it's just too much of a drag on performance. It requires excess programming to optimize for it. And frankly, the smaller we get down in nanometers, the smaller we make boards, the closer the memory has to be. Latency just becomes more and more and more of an issue. And it's got to be about scaling multiple dies as one GPU, not about multiple graphics cards that are all communicating over some bus that causes latency. We're not getting it anymore. I don't worry though, because we're going to get to insane levels of GPU performance anyways. RDNA 3 is going to have multi-GPU designs. MI300, wait till you guys see what MI300 is. It's fucking nuts. Hopper's got nothing compared to this thing. And RDNA 4 is going to be a big evolution of RDNA 3. So I don't think we're going to need SLI anytime soon. I think within in 2 years, because again, I think RDNA 3 launches late this year. And then a year and a half later, we'll get RDNA 4. So 2 years from now, early 2024, we'll be on RDNA 4. And I think we're going to have graphics cards that are 4 times stronger than what we have now or more. So I'm just really, and then imagine, FSR 2.0 and DLSS, I think will just be standard in every game, if not, Unreal Engine 5's TSR and other uses. So think about that too, guys. Or right now, DLSS is becoming standard. Right now, FSR is starting to get decent support. And we're starting to see dynamic resolutions show up. Not always well, but in most games, and half the time they work really well. In Halo Infinite, I think dynamic resolution is fucking awesome. Works really great in Gears of War as well. So I think when you look at those things, you got to go, oh, so think about it. 2 years from now, we may have 4 or 5 times the performance and FSR 2.0 and all of the other things will be standard. I don't think performance is going to be that much of a concern. Could be wrong. NX gamers seem to disagree with me. He's worried people are going to try pushing 8K again. I don't think they will. Or at least I think if they push 8K, no one's going to care. Could be wrong. But I think you're not going to worry about I'm not too worried about needing SLI anytime soon. All right, let me see. Let me move on to another timestamp here. Dr. B writes in with a tip. Thank you for the tip. He says, will Lovelace future NVIDIA GPUs have LHR? Or will NVIDIA remove LHR on Ampere at some point? I don't think NVIDIA is going to bother to officially remove LHR from Ampere. At the end of the day, it's already de facto gone, and they're just going to let it be where it is. Will Lovelace have LHR? None of my sources are sure. I'm just going to say my opinion 50-50. I think there's a decent chance they lock it down from the start because I think Lovelace is going to be crazy good at mining. Unfortunately, I think RDNA 3 probably will too. I think Lovelace is going to be insanely good at mining. And it's funny. I was just looking at Ethereum calculator based on my pricing here in Nashville for energy. If I got a 3090 Ti for $2,000, it would actually maybe pay off itself in a little over a year, which isn't good. But at the same time, still, you might pay for half of a $2,000 card on its own. I don't know. It's up to what Nvidia thinks. I lean towards there'll be some version of LHR because they're just going to sell those separately, or they'll want to keep manufacturing Ampere for mining firms. Hopefully that's what Nvidia does, by the way, focuses their TSMC volume, hopefully 4 nanometer, on Lovelace for gamers, and then just pumps out mining cards for cheap. But I don't know. It's hard to say because miners will still find a way to use Lovelace. And as we've seen in recent things, there's been Ampere's LHR has been cracked since it came out in the big mining firms, and they have billions of dollars to hire programmers to do that in China and such. So I don't know. I think Nvidia is going to probably put LHR in Lovelace. I guess if you put a gun up to my head, but it's not going to make a difference. Ultimately, miners will find ways to mine with these cards because there's enough money for it. And by the way, Lovelace is going to be insanely good at editing, so editors are going to buy it too. Casual 7 writes in, Tom, do you think Intel will work on their own I/O and eventually push for a more unified system between their CPU and GPU? So are you talking like Optane, CXL, like maybe some kind of stacked memory on an AP? Yes, they are. So I know that an upcoming Lake after Lunar Lake is doing some crazy stuff with memory. That's, if you look on the whiteboard, by the way, in my videos, I kind of hint at what an upcoming Intel CPU leak is. I think Intel's going to. I think they're going to have some pretty interesting memory systems in APUs. Besides that, though, that's all I can say. Nabu Sad says, any chance you'll get Gamers Nexus or Angry Joe as the next guest? I've reached out to Gamers Nexus, so it's up to him to say yes. Really, what I'm interested in is seeing if anyone can get a hold of Linus Tech Tips, because on their podcast, they've mentioned my channel and said they want to come on the show. And I don't know if there's someone at the Linus Tech Tips place that's like throwing my emails away, but I've emailed them and they've said they want to come on and still no response. So I'd say let's worry about Linus Tech Tips first. Next is NX Gamer. Then I'm going to have a CEO of a boutique PC builder. And then after that, I've got an overclocker lined up. I've got a few things coming. So, but yes to almost anyone. We'll see. Just, hey, they can reach out to me too. Let me see here. Was there any? I don't see any Patreon questions here. Okay, here's one from QH Freddy. I like this. Do you think AMD is actually leaning to do sensible naming schemes, or do you think the new 6000 series laptop cards, they're just going to fall back into the same trap? Oh, let me see. RX 7000 naming. So, in other words, QH Freddy, you're asking me, is AMD actually going to name, for example, if they use Navi 33 for laptop, which I think is a main focus of Navi 33, by the way, are they going to call it the 7600 XT laptop, or are they going to call it the 7800M? I lean towards them calling it the 7800M, to be honest. I think they're going to use this separate naming scheme that's all over the place. We have like a 6800S that's Navi 23 and is weird. I think that's what you're going to see. I don't expect AMD to have one for one naming schemes for laptop anytime soon, unfortunately. All right, let me see here. All right, not seeing any other tipped questions or new Patreon questions popping up in the Discord. Hmm. Casey Andrews writes in, do you think it's worth returning my 6600 XT to Micro Center? I've been trying to sell it on Facebook, but haven't really gotten anything. And I bought the 2-year warranty on it. So leaning towards that. Um, I don't know, man. You got to do what you got to do. I don't know what you bought it for. Did you buy it for $600? I'd probably try to return it, to be honest. But we'll have to see if they, we'll have to see, if they'd even accept that. I don't know. I would, it depends what you got it for. If it's, I'd almost just see if you can get a cheaper card and then sell it for 450 or something. I don't know. I don't know. It's a tough time to buy if you bought a month ago. AC666 writes in from the Discord. The Moore's Law is a Discord, which you get access to if you go to Patreon. He says, hey, Tom, can you at least acknowledge whether Rialto Bridge, successor to Ponte Vecchio, uses less tiles than the 47 of Ponte Vecchio? Um, all I've been really okay to say is that, and this is sounds so lame, Rialto Bridge is better than Ponte Vecchio in every way. Does it use less tiles? I don't think it does. Or from what I've heard, it's more elaborate, but I think that's all I can say now. I don't really have all the details yet, but I do know it's Rialto Bridge. Roundup Kira writes in, he says, is there a chance for supply to have a relapse of problems after the 40/7000 series launch, especially considering the Ukrainian war and the fact that new fabs haven't started? Um, I would go back to what was the name of that guest? There was a recent broken silicon that was really good. He is a federal employee. That's all I can say about him, but you can kind of guess which departments he worked in if he's not allowed to tell me which departments he works in. And he has a lot of experience with FPGAs, supply chains, war. So, yeah, this was the government engineer, spelled GOVT. This was Broken Silicon 143 from a month ago. And we talk about this, and I agreed with his point. He said, will the war in Ukraine have problems for supply chains? Yes, but it's one region as opposed to COVID, where it's all regions. So I think what we're going to see is supply still get better for most things, but there will be some things that won't. There will be some rare minerals we can get elsewhere, though, like Brazil makes high quality silicon, just like Russia. And wheat prices may go up, but that's not used to make a graphics card. So, I think that the war in Ukraine, the disgusting war in Ukraine, is going to cause supply problems, but not as much as we saw with COVID in 2020. So that's what I would say. And so I don't see a relapse of the problems. Will there be random supply problems? Yes, but they won't be like before. Boris Caldera writes in. He says, "Love your channel. A question is someone without a decent GPU for the last 2 years. I'm trying to get a current gen GPU for close to MSRP. Should I do that or wait for the next gen or even a 6x50 XT card? The longer you wait, the cheaper it will be." Honestly, it's kind of the same advice I've been giving this whole shortage. Try to get the AMD reference cards on AMD.com if you're desperate. I think if you're up early when they drop on AMD.com, at least in the US, although I don't know if you're in the US, you did tip me in euros, so I still think they do drops around then there. 6700 XTs have typically stayed in stock for about an hour, and the 6900 XT was in stock for 12 hours, or not 12, maybe 6 hours. Should if you can get it at 6900 XT for a grand, could do worse right now, and you'll always be able to sell that and recoup some costs, I think. So, I don't know. I try to get a reference card from AMD, or I mean, I don't know if you only have two monitors and you can make do with the 6500 XT. Those are dropping below $200, I believe, in Europe every now and then. If you can get a 3050 for $300, that's a good stopgap card. Um, Otherwise, that's about it. It's still going to be prices going down, man. So, hey, Diddly Diddly writes in, TSMC versus Intel in 2024. Whose fab will be better? TSMC. Next question. Round Duck writes in, I don't know about 2026 though. Maybe not 2026. Round Duck writes in, isn't supply merely due to hype for the new GPUs? No, no. It was a perfect storm. Let me even put this down as a time stamp. Crane supply. So, no, 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 no. The shortages we saw through 2020, 2021, and the beginning of this year, it was pent-up demand due to hype for obvious reasons. It was a much bigger increase than RDNA 1 and Turing, so that's why. Number 2, you had Nvidia play a bunch of shit shenanigans with Ampere's launch, like basically not having a launch for a month until RDNA 2 came out, selling a third of their cards to miners, then miners buying up other cards on the market. And then you had lower production because, guys, you guys need to understand this. TSMC reduced production by about 30% in the beginning of 2020 because they thought demand would be lower. So did the automakers. And then demand was higher because, everyone's stuck inside and can't fly an airplane. So they're going to drive more. They're going to want better PCs. They're stuck inside during a winter where they can't travel. So they're going to want a game and they'll pay extra to game. And so one reason we also saw these shortages wasn't just miners, Nvidia's shenanigans, and pent-up demand, although those three were major factors. It was also that they produced less and then needed more. And then on top of that, COVID directly. Listen to the recent Daniel Nenny episode where we talk about how he was like tracking like who was out of work at specific shipping centers around San Francisco where he lives. And he said there is just random dock workers who would get sick, they would get COVID, and then they'd have to send everyone home for a week. Well, that completely messes up imports and shipping. So think about that. Like if you keep having these runaway effects, random people getting sick, which is still happening in a new outbreak in China, from what I'm told by contacts around in Southeast Asia, and then you have pent up demand, not producing enough before the pent up demand, and then mining. I mean, it was a perfect storm. It was a perfect storm. It was not just mining. It was not just Nvidia. It was not just demand. It was not just COVID. It was all of the above. And also Ampere was really good at like rendering too. So you had people like me justifying paying for a new card they didn't need because it rendered twice as fast. Nabi Assad writes in, why is AMD so behind in terms of video editing and live capture? I think their live capture is actually great, unless you have a 6500 XT. I like Relive a lot. He says, what are they doing about, and will they ever be on NVIDIA's level in video and capture? Well, you have to remember that AMD RDNA 2 is more gamer focused than Ampere was, frankly. Ampere was but for both. And on top of that, I mean, I don't know. Nvidia just puts a lot more effort into it. So, what I would say is, will AMD ever be on the same level in editing? I think RDNA 3 they might by the end of the generation, but we're gonna have to see. I just think there's no way around it. The compute focus of Nvidia lately kind of gives them an advantage and a reason to more optimized for it for editing. But on a lot of editing apps, RDNA 2 is starting to get the driver optimizations it needs, and it's working pretty well. I forgot. I just still need to test that with some RDNA 2 cards here in my benchmarking station. Besides that, though, I mean, Nvidia just kind of focuses on it more, and I think you're going to see AMD focus on it a lot more with RDNA 3. If it'll be as good as Lovelace's editing performance, hard to say. It might honestly just be because of brute force that they have good editing too. All right, let me put that. AMD editing. Matthew McCartan writes in. He says, "How do you feel about Store Me since they switched to SSD caching from tiered? I use 2 times 10 terabyte HDDs cached with 2 times 1 terabyte SSDs. I have mini games." I really don't have any thoughts. I only use SSDs. I have 2 NVMe drives and I think 4 SATA SSDs in my desktop. I've got a brand new NVMe 7 gigabyte per second SSD for my benchmarking station. I don't really have a need for tiered setups, so I don't really have thoughts on it. I just think that the high end SSDs are cheap enough now, or that's just all I bother with, honestly. Okay, let us see here. AC666 writes in from the Patreon, just like you guys can for free if you support us. And he says, "Do you know if Intel or AMD have any plans on their future roadmaps for CXL on consumer platforms?" Not that I've seen yet. It's not in Raptor Lake. I don't think it's in Meteor Lake. Can't say it for Lunar Lake. So, not in the next year. No. Unless you consider Fishhawk Falls consumer, but I think that's considered pseudo consumer, mainstream workstation. I think maybe that'll get it for something, but otherwise, not for a year, it seems, unless you count things that I don't know are really consumer platforms. Wait, is that TV behind you actually broken? No, that's the broken silicon logo. Which actually, I wonder if I can turn this. There's a broken silicon logo right there as well. Uh, that is a soundproofing board. That is a broken silicon logo. It looks really cool. I still need to finish decluttering and putting up the rest of the sound mitigation stuff in here. See, AC666 says, "Can you discuss anything else about AMD's use of FOCOS organic interposers in Zen 4's platform?" Nah, not yet. I mean, and again, it's like I honestly haven't looked into Zen 4 since months ago. So even if I could, it's like I would be kind of speaking out of turn at a certain point. I don't like to just rush out little things unless I'm 100% sure of stuff. Will the three TMC Payton writes in, will the 3 GPU makers place a separate encoding die on their GPUs? I don't. So XE doesn't have a separate die right now, but they have an encoding IP block, I believe. So eventually, yes, I think so. Yeah, and it's funny. AC666 says Google VCU, which I believe Meteor Lake is going to have as well. Their neural engine kind of works as that. So the answer is yes, but not in Alchemist, but yes in the future graphics cards. All right, let us see here. Don't forget again to like. Make sure you subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. And I'm not seeing any other tips, so I might answer a few more. We'll be going for an hour and a half. That's usually about as long as I want to go. Under 2 hours, more than an hour and a half. Someone says, where does he talk about pricing? Multiple times, man. You'll get the timestamps soon enough. But let me see. Any final questions, guys? Kind of last call here. You can already tell I'm starting to stumble and get tired. Any final questions, both from the patrons or from people in the live chat who just want to give a tip and get Reese a bone? I like this question. I will answer that one from a patron. Where are we at in timestamps here? 134. So, what is it? Marganov writes in from the Patreon and he says, "Do you have any info on pricing for the 6X50 XT RDNA 2 refresh cards coming from AMD?" So, first, let me just turn this a little more to me. First, I would recommend to everybody watch my Road to RDNA 3 and Lovelace video. I go line by line per card coming out over this year. The first one I hit was 3090 Ti. The second one was, I believe, 6950 XT, 6750 XT, 6650 XT. I go line by line what I expect for pricing and performance. What's interesting, though, is since that video, which I believe is already about a month old, I had it 50-50 that the 3090 Ti was going to be no MSRP. And of course, the evening before the 3090 Ti launched, I leaked first that it had a $2,000 MSRP, which surprised me. And that tells you something. If Nvidia is doing an MSRP on the 3090 Ti, and I know it's $2,000, but it's not $3,000, that tells you they expect pricing to keep going down. So, yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see an MSRP on these cards, then probably if the 3090 Ti will, because I know AMD was considering not doing it. They're really pissed about the perception of the 6500 XT, and they go, well, maybe we just shouldn't put MSRPs anymore, but I think they know they have to. So where would I expect those MSRPs to be? It's hard to say. I could almost see, I kind of expect the 6950 XT to be 1200, the 6750 XT to be 500, and the 6650 XT to be 400, and them all to bring about a 10% boost in performance at most. But it's interesting. I really hope AMD pushes the 6650 because there's definitely gas left in the tank there. Like, I'm sure it's like, what, isn't it just a 130-watt card? Like, I'm pretty sure they could push the 6650 XT to 2.8 gigahertz, 2.7 at least. They can give it, 18 gigabit per second memory, which is like a 14% overclock in memory. I really feel if they did that and they went from like a 130-watt TDP to like a 200-watt TDP, I think they could add at least 10% performance. And if they did, in 1080p, you'd be looking at something that's as strong as a 3060 Ti or almost. And that's an interesting proposition. If you could actually have it at MSRP $400, actually at 3060 Ti performance, I think that'd be an interesting card. And you could see it, its pricing drift below to $400 to 350. That'd be pretty cool. And you're getting, 2080 performance, 2080 super performance for at least in 1080p for 400 or less. And for the 6750 XT, I've been very clear that I think they're just basically replacing the 6800, that they're replacing the 6700 XT because they don't think there's really room for both. And they think they can make a 6700 XT get within 10-15% of the 6800 and be their sub $600 card with 12 gigabytes of RAM. That giving 16 gigabytes to a sub $600 card is just too expensive anymore. So I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see 6750 XTs going for 500 to 550 that are above a 3070's performance, or at least at the same level with 12 gigabytes, which I think is really competitive. Boosting the 6700 XT by 10% gives you 12 gigabyte 3070 performance for less money than most 3070s are selling for right now. And again, the 6650 XT can be a direct 3060 Ti competitor, and the 6950 XT will probably be a $1,200 3090 Ti, which is going to be cool. So that's what you should expect. And they should launch what? I think in a few weeks is my understanding. I would have to double check my notes again, but I believe that's when they should come out. Um, Mark Smith tips. Excellent stream today. Thank you, Tom. Oh, thanks for viewing and thank you for the tip. And so Carrie No Sugata writes in and he says, Tom, you've talked about godly APUs for a bit. What kind of godly APU would you buy over a discrete GPU? I like this question. I'm going to write down a timestamp here. And again, final call on questions. This might be the last question. I don't get any more tips or see anything interesting come out. Yeah. AC666 writes in on the Discord for Patreon for patrons, and he says a PS5. Kind of. I mean, what APU would I buy over a desktop GPU or whatever? So, what would I buy? It depends, right? Ultimately, for me, I use my desktop for editing. So for me to truly get a desktop APU, I'd kind of want it to go balls to the walls like the M1 Ultra. Like I'd want a motherboard that doesn't just come with an APU that's as strong as a desktop card, but maybe comes with, 8 stacks of HBM3 or something that you can use as RAM, like something crazy is what I would want. so that not only is it the same performance as what I had before, but because there's lower latency. Yeah, AC says so. MI 300, pretty much. Although MI 300 is more than just that. But it's like, yeah, let me do things I couldn't do before. That's what I would want in a desktop. Now, what about in a laptop? Well, what if they brought me something that is stronger than my current desktop, gets you kind of 3090 Ti plus stacked memory and everything in a laptop and made it so I didn't need a desktop. That's kind of what I would be looking for. But that's me. I use it for editing. Time is money. I'm willing to pay not for the best, but for something better than the most people would for my desktop. For most people, the APU we really need is something that makes it so you don't need to buy 6500 XT, frankly. And I think it's doable. Rembrandt's die size, guys. Rembrandt's die size is what is it? It's, like 200 millimeters squared. So I think you can fit up to about 250 in an AM4 socket if you wanted to. They could tack on then they could have tacked on 16 compute units in the Infinity cache, even if they had to remove a couple of cores. So yeah, I don't know. I think that they could make a 6500 XT-ish APU right now, but that uses 125 watts. They just haven't. And it's unfortunate. And I think that's what the market really wants. The problem is, I don't know what they would sell it for. The 6500 XT is 200. They're selling APUs for 350. So they probably charge 300 bucks for it. Yeah, I guess that'd be pretty sick if it had PCIe 4.0 so that you can then upgrade it later. But, you know, that has yet to be seen. That's what I wish existed. All right, let's see here. Nabu Sad writes in, will Sony ever return to portable consoles? Fun fact, there was a PS Vita too. There was one. Can't say anything besides that because I don't want to reveal things I was told I couldn't say, but it existed. They just didn't launch it. It got to a farther stage than you guys would think. I don't see them doing it anytime soon, though. I don't have any evidence there anytime soon. I know they're always playing around with stuff, but not anytime soon. Steam Deck. Let's see here. Someone says Steam Deck has a 1.7 teraflop APU. Be nice to see a 3 teraflop one at the same wattage. That'd be fantastic for VR2. Fantastic, but to be capable of it. Yeah, I mean, look at it this way, guys. The 6500 XT isn't it 5.2, 5.8 teraflops? So that should give you an idea of what AMD could do if they wanted to. They could probably bring you something that's triple the performance of a Steam Deck. At least double, I'd say. All right. Someone just asked about on the Patreon page. Let me see. Typically, you should use the Discord. Well, we're talking near the end of one of these streams if you want me to read a question from the Patreon, but let me look. Let me see if there's any last minute questions there for any new users who don't know the rules yet. That's fair. Let me see what he says. Okay, let's make this the final one. I've got a few people on the Discord. I've got Dr. Forbin writing in. I've got Gaiman since Reagan, and I've got Round Duck Kira. So I'm just going to combine these. And I said I was going to talk about this in the title of this live stream, so I should probably get to it, huh? So RDNA 3 and Lovelace pricing. Let's get this out of the way as a final subject, huh? So let me see here. Dr. Forbin writes in, finally, nice to catch you live. Do you believe that we gamers will have a legitimate 6900 XT at half the price in the 7000 series? Yes. So, and I've seen this has caused so much consternation to this day. It's just funny to me how much there's been consternation around me saying Navi 33 will probably have 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I continue to maintain the problem is people are overestimating its price, I think. And I think that when you look at where prices are going right now, I don't know. It's Navi 33, not Navi 32. Just like Navi 23. How much did that cost? 380. And by the way, Navi 23 was going to be 350 or less. I think it was actually going to be 330 if pricing wasn't out of whack. They were planning to charge 300 to 350 for Navi 23. So that should tell you what they're capable of for Navi 33. If AMD wants to, they can charge $400 for a 7600 XT, 8 gigabyte that is as strong as a 6900 XT. I think that'd be a killer product. The problem will be is if they try to get away with making it a 7700 XT with 8 gigabytes, then people will complain, and I think somewhat justifiably. But at the end of the day, even if they did that, that'd still be 6900 XT performance for $500, guys. And that would be a doubling of price performance over what we had before. So, yep, I think for sure, to answer Dr. Forbin's question, we're going to get better price performance than we have now. For the most egregious cards, it'll be a doubling. For the best priced cards, like your 480 6700 XT, or like where is 6700 XT going to end up? Probably close to like an RX 7500 XT for 300. So a 30-40% increase in price performance for some of the cheaper cards. But for some of the crazy examples, there'll be a doubling. And so, yes, I'm sorry, by the end of this year, I think we're going to have good pricing. I say the same for the 4060. I already said it earlier in this live stream, but let me say it again now. I think you're looking at a 4060 that's below 500, probably 400 with 12 gigabytes. That is around 3080 performance, maybe better than 3080 ray tracing, maybe 3090 Ti ray tracing. And yeah, I really think that that's going to be a big deal, and I really think they're going to hit those prices pretty like. There's going to be enough supply in the used market where I don't think we're going to see MSRP as bad as we have now. So that's what I want to say, because I see a lot of people freaking out, even getting mad at me. I'm not defending an 8 gigabyte 7700 XT. I think it's probably going to be the 7600 XT. The only reason they would have an 8 gigabyte 7700 XT is if in reality it beats the 6900 XT by 20% and beats the 4070. And if the 4070 is 16 gigabytes for 650 or 600, and then AMD has a $500 card that's stronger with half the RAM, that's when I could see AMD trying to get away with it. And I think it'll be up to you to say yes or no. It's like, I would get a 4070 because I video edit it. But if I was a 1440p gamer, I might save $100 for the stronger card. So I think we just have to remember there's still unknowns. We still can't be 100% sure exactly how these lineups will stack up. But yes, the pricing is going to be better than I think a lot of people expect. I think they're going to raise pricing per tier. There's no way around it because of inflation. Inflation is here to stay by at least 20%. But again, think about what that means. 20% increase in pricing. So what? We have like a $429 7600 XT that's as strong as a 6900 XT. Still better pricing than before. And I think they can definitely afford to do that, by the way, if they want to. Let me see here. Yeah, so I think I basically answered Round Duck's question 2 on the Patreon. Let me make sure I haven't missed any tipped questions. All right, well, I think that's going to do it then. TMC Payton writes in, will cards with low amounts of Infinity Cache age poorly as texture size increases? They'll age how you expect them to. I don't think so. And I think I've been testing the 6500 XT a lot. And if you don't use more than 3 gigabytes or don't use more than 3.5 gigabytes of RAM, it actually performs way better than I expected. If you go over that, no. I think what you're going to see is whatever the Infinity Cache is works, whatever the bus is works. It's just that's what you're going to get. You know, I think that it's very clear that an Infinity Cache does its job even when it's overburdened. So, no, I don't think low Infinity Cache cards will age poorly, really. I just think they're always going to be what they were meant to do, which is 1080p or 1440p or whatever. Do a backflip. I can't right now. Plus my back hurts, so I don't think I'm very capable of it. Yeah, AC666 writes in and says 8 gigabytes help them lower the BOM cost and keep the price below like the 6700 XT, which is my argument too. All right, let's see. All right, well, I think that's just going to about do it. I've been going for almost 2 hours. I'm falling asleep. I got to get Reese out there for a walk before it gets too dark. I want to thank all of you for watching. Again, a shout out to Micro Center. Go to the link in the description and get $25 free just by submitting a build. You just get 25 bucks. If you've already used my previous Micro Center link that gave you a free SSD, which will be coming back, I've got more Micro Center. Micro Center employees really seem to like me right now. Like we get along. So they're going to be sending more deals every live stream and sometimes even in normal videos. So look out for the future ones. But right now, before you could get an SSD completely free from Micro Center, now you can get $25 free. Use that link. Really helps the channel, even if you just click on those links in the description. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. It just unsubscribed a bunch of people. Look out for the upcoming Broken Silicon. It's going to be one of the best ones of this year. Me and NX Gamer are open about what PlayStation exclusives are coming out. He knows more about the inner workings of PSVR than I expected. And we talk about performance of Lovelace and stuff too. What a brilliant guy. And then subscribe to Broken Silicon. Give us a review. Like this video. Tell your friends about us. Stay safe and just have a good weekend, everybody, or rest of the weekend, I guess, and probably Monday for most of you who end up watching this. But all right, guys, thanks for watching. Cheers.